we handle benefits, HR, payroll for companies.
And they actually work
Yes.
for our company.
Yes.
You're a customer.
Yes.
I'm Chris Gray, and I'm starting a tech startup called Track Ahead. So this is career discovery and development for college students to connect with employers.
Great.
I'm John Walden, student at Waynesburg University, and I'm interning with MetaSearch.
Best intern I've ever had. First one, by the way.
First one.
Yes, I'm Curtis Moss, and I manage Law Fishers.
Matt Walter, I have a tech startup that helps public safety.
Quake Fletcher with a tech startup called Peak Me. We do talent management and team performance.
David Wosheets with MetaSearch. I work along with John.
And Healthy Substance and Food, kind of informal here.
Okay, that's good.
And I'm John Weymouth with MetaSearch. That hires the best interns ever in the world. Best president in the world. Best business coach in the world. So with no further ado, let's get started. Jim Gill will be presenting today, and he is going to kind of illuminate for us the current business model that we have out there for business, and talk about a transformative model that would really make a difference for everyone. And Jim's background is extensive. He's worked in all types of businesses, so his knowledge base comes from being there and doing that. And his the one thing that I love about Jim is that his way of thinking not only does it match with mine, but his way of thinking is that he sees things differently, and that out-of-the-box view really helps bring about new ideas and change. So don't let his age fool you. This guy is probably going on 25 when it comes to innovative ideas. Jim
Thank you,
Gill.
John. First of all, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. But let me tell you what the opportunity really is. I spent 2 weeks putting this presentation together. That was the work. Doing this is easy. But I need to have an audience to work towards. And as I don't know if any of you guys know who Wayne Dyer is, but he's pretty popular. And when he first started, he said he would give a speech to 3 rats in a sewer if they would listen. So I've got an audience, and that's what I was looking for.
So you're putting this with rats? Is that it?
No, you're my guinea pig. My very first seminar that I did, I actually had templates with guinea pigs on them, because you got to start someplace. You guys all know that. You're all starting to do something new. What I have on the slide there is I teach executives and business owners how to work together with their employees to create a successful company that works for everyone. If you read just the middle stuff, I teach how to create for everyone, okay? What you guys are doing, and first of all, when John told me that, suggested I do this in front of you geeks and entrepreneurs and startups, I said, what do you want to do that for? I want to talk to business people who have a business ongoing, and I can help them build their business. John was a startup technically when I worked for him. He proved to me that I could do that also. But the point is, after I thought about it, you people are talking into what I've been to, okay? Everything you do, you have to sell to corporate America or somebody in that arena. And you're going to end up having to create a management model that will suffice to get that done. Now, unfortunately, most of your venture capital people and investment, what do you call it, angel investors, are all steeped in the old model. What I'm going to teach you is little things about your current model and what could be. John said I have a vast background. These are the corporations I work for. Well, I spent 20 years in those 4 companies, 14 with U.S. Steel up in Gary, Indiana. Pretty interesting company. Now, I could tell you thousands of stories. We could be here for 2 weeks just talking about what I did there. But obviously that's not going to achieve our purpose. John's already told me don't stay. So I'm gonna listen to John. But this is the normal organizational model. It's real simple. I like to keep things real simple and easy. It's really always been described as a pyramid. There's people at the top. What they have to do is consider their focus. Their whole focus is on money. They've got to generate the money to make the business work. And people say, well, profit is a dirty word. Well, without it, you don't have a business. So profit is not a dirty word. It's how you relate to that. The frontline people, whether it's a service company or manufacturing business or whatever, they are always looking at things they need to accomplish the jobs they're expected to do. They never have, if things break down, if things don't work right, they're always looking at things. The people in the middle are the trouble problems as well as trouble starts. The middle level managers have to be bilingual. They have to be able to talk dollars to the top, things to the bottom, and translate both ways. Now, if you put yourself in that position, what do? They filter everything. The executive tells them, this is what I want. They think about it, they figure out how to sell it to these guys. What they sell to these guys, not what he said, or they said. So it's the same way, going back the other way, the communication. These people say, I need this. He says, oh, that's not any good. So he kicks that out of the basket right away. Never does get to the top. And these people think it's in the process. So you have this real miscommunication problem. If we expand it, all the departments are built in the same model. I think you would understand that real quickly. All these, I call them fiefdoms, all these small departments are a model based on the original model. They have the same structure. To illustrate that, I talk about accounting. This is the problem too, by the way. The accounting, they'll put you out of business. The accounting department has a hierarchy just like the big company, the whole company does. And what happens there is we are really looking at a communication problem. It's the system, stupid. It's not the people within the system. It took me a long time to figure this out, like about 15 years. I was always blaming accountants, lawyers, presidents, CEOs for the problems when it was really the system they're involved in. It's not the people. They started out just like you people. You're starting out a new business. Your dream is to create something that's really, really good, successful, and will solve problems and also help people achieve what they want. So you have a multiple idea of what you're trying to accomplish, but when you get into the real world, you have to conform to what they have or what's in place. What this creates is, like you said, problems between labor, and it's always considered management versus labor, us versus them. But it really is everybody against everybody. In that slide I just showed you, all those departments are competing for dollars, personnel, position, and they're all trying to figure out how they can be the top guy. So they call that the kingmaker, right? They want to be the king at the top. Now, this slide, my son drew this, by the way. I was really proud of it. What's his name? Oh, I can't think of his name. This guy, Denise,
It's in Boston. So.
Anyway, he was a philosopher back in the 70s, and he said the problem in corporate America is that we have a negative emotion tree. All the negative emotions are on the branches, and they're supported by blame, justification, and rationalization. And what that means is that's part of this disgruntled process going on between hierarchies and different departments and all that type of thing. And I lived in that for 20 years, so I know this is true. If you want to get rid of the negative emotions, two things you can do. You can cut the tree down, get rid of blame, which is part of my process, or you can eliminate justification, rationalization, which is also included in the process that I'm going to talk about. So we are going to create a process to get rid of that, which can't be done, right? It hasn't been done yet, but at least. Colin Powell said in this book right here, whoops, we did say it. by the way, this book, I've read probably, or I shouldn't say read, but I've started reading at least 50 or 60 books on management, leadership, things like that. This is the only one I ever completed. My buddy gave it to me and he said, this is the greatest book, you gotta read it. I read about 30 pages. I thought, just another book, right? I started to get back to him and I got stuck in somewhere and I started reading. I never finished, I finished it in 2 days. It's just unbelievable, best book I've ever read. Because he's real, he's not talking some highfalutin stuff. This is what he really did and how he worked in the government and whatever. But his comment there is what I've been saying all my life. You can get people to do it if you put a gun to their head or put fear behind it or whatever. But that doesn't necessarily inspire pride in the job, the product, or a passion for excellence. These are the things we want in our people. It's so simple, it stinks. But people don't think about this. They want to do it with the iron fist, so to speak. So the next step is another little simple concept that I believe in. It's called the accounting part of the business, or revenue, profit, and expenses. Now, how much more difficult can it be, right? You got to generate revenue, right? And then the revenue is spent either in expenses or it's kept in the business as profit or put in your pocket, right? That's all there is to it. The problem with this is that in the traditional business, the traditional way to increase profit is to cut expenses, right? We've got to get rid of expenses, and in the real world, I worked at US Steel, as I said, they went to 2 downsizings. 20% of the people go out this month, next year, 20% more go out the door. Every person in that company is worth $150,000 if you get rid of them. So that's how they did the math, and they figured out how much they wanted to save. That's the number of people they got rid of. This is a negative, totally negative approach. And people know it because they've seen it happen. But in this tradition, what they do is they raise revenue however they can do that. But let's assume they keep the same percentage of profit. Then the expenses grow with it, right? Too often, they actually cross over, right? The expenses go higher than the revenue, and then they go out of business, right? Well, this is a better model. If you take a look at how, if we could reduce expenses in some way, at the same time we're increasing revenue, that can give you leverage to do what? Really grow revenue, right? But you're going to continue to get what? More profit. Whoops. John, you didn't.
Slide right or left.
All right. Thank you. I won't tell.
There you go.
No, that's what I got.
Just talk
All
to
right.
it. Talk to it.
Okay, that's my Pac-Man theory. Oh, I forgot to say something at the beginning of this. Confucius said, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. Those are 3 different modalities, right? Well, if you notice this presentation, I got the, I'm doing the speaking, right? So I'm talking and you can hear me. But you can also see what I'm talking about. The magic is figuring out how to do it. Because you don't, everything I'm going to tell you, if you walk out here and say, boy, this guy's got the answer, I got some industrial psychologists I can turn you on to. All you can come out of this with is an idea that maybe what I'm talking about will work. I've proven it works for a lot of years. So it does work, but it only works if you do it. It's an experiential process. You cannot do this and not get it to make sense to you. It's like magic. I've watched it happen so many times. Come on in, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the system that I developed technically back in many years ago, 1984, I mean. I spent a whole year trying to design a process that I thought would end up with the results that I had already produced in those 4 companies that I showed you. And it wasn't easy. I worked with a lot of people trying to get different ideas to mesh. Now, this says process-driven, people-directed. I don't think it's a stretch for you to understand everything. Let's take your home life. Is there processes there? Of course. And who's directing them? If you're married, it's your husband or your wife, right? Because you don't get a chance to do that. But what happens is, in a corporation, as I showed you the hierarchy, the top makes the rules, right? It's called the golden rule. Them that got the gold make the rules, right? So the communication comes from the top, as I told you, and they're trying to tell the people how to do the business, and all the filters involved make it a mishmash. So this process that I created is infinite. It works for a business, it works for your personal life. We work in a manufacturing facility, a service, nonprofit, for profit, anything. It works, the process that we created does all that. The guy behind this was Dr. W. Edwards Deming. Some of you might know who he is, probably the young people. He died in '92, so you probably don't have any recollection of him. I met him, and the first day I sat in the audience, there were like 300 people in the audience. This man was 80 years old, 6'3" or 4", and he spent the whole day talking about his methodology. I walked out of there with tingles because I knew he had the answer. He went to, MacArthur took him to Japan in 1950. He's the one that taught Japan how to do all the stuff they're doing to kick our butts. And they're doing a pretty good job of it, or at least back in the 70s and 80s they did. So I knew he had the answer. About 2 months later, I had an opportunity to have dinner with him. I sat next to him, it's unbelievable. I'm sitting next to God, in my opinion. And I had a chance to actually ask him his questions about what he thought, what he did, and very open, very, very blunt. He gave me a couple of shots. But he is the man that I totally believe was misunderstood back then. Everybody in the corporate America went after quality instead of quality management. They went after the quality because they thought that's what Japan was doing that was better than them. They didn't look at what Japan was doing behind the scenes. So I decided, the Venn diagram has 3 components, right? And as you notice, they all converged here. And that's a secret to the process that I developed. The guy on the right is Robert Greenleaf. When I started teaching or working in corporate America as a supervisor, I had to supervise people, okay? I didn't know any better. Nobody taught me what to do. They just told me to go out there and do this, okay? Well, I was brought up in a very, very devout Christian environment, my mother and my grandmother, and they sort of drilled into me the golden rule. So when I worked with people, I felt that I should treat them the way I would want to be treated. It was just automatic. I didn't even think about it. But when I got into doing all this stuff, that's what I talked about. I said I used the golden rule, and I call it reverse psychology. I didn't come out with a hammer and make people do things. I kind of snuck in the back door. Well, Robert Greenleaf created what they call the Robert Greenleaf Foundation for Servant Leadership. It happens to be right here in Indianapolis. Well, it wasn't in Indianapolis, now it's in Westfield. But it's an international corporation, and they go all over the world. They have symposiums and people that take on their philosophy. It's a philosophy. I sat with the president and said, why aren't you trying to figure out how to teach people to be servant leaders? He said, we're thinking about that. Well, they haven't done it yet. I thought that's what I'm doing. This process will create servant leaders if they like it or not. Because at the end, they like it because it works. I think you might know Dr. Martin Luther King. For about 20 years, I had Deming's picture on my wall and this guy next to him. And what I got from Dr. King more than everybody says, I have a dream. That's all they think about. But his dream was just like window dressing. What he really was talking was nonviolence. How to do it in a nonviolent way. It says nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. Nonviolence seeks defend injustice, not people. Defeat injustice, not people. Nonviolence holds that suffering can educate and transform. Nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. Nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. Now, if you read that and you think about what Dr. King represented, what he did, that's powerful. But that's also incorporated what I'm doing, because I believe everything that I just read. Not very well, but I read it. So Dr. King actually completed my triangle here. And they are the foundation for this whole principle. It's really, to me, it's very exciting that I even came up with this. Okay, we'll throw a little humor into this at this point. This is called Yabbit. And back when I first started, I'd be talking to an audience of corporate people, business people, or even hourly people. And I would say something, they'd say, Yabbit, and they'd raise their hand, Yabbit, Yabbit. So it was one of these things that I was communicating something, right? But they weren't getting it. Because why? Do me a favor, put your hand in front of your face. The palm facing your face. Okay, if you take that palm of your hand and you believe that that represents everything you've been exposed to for your entire life, it's in your brain, right? Your brain supposedly has all this stuff in there. If I throw something into your palm of your hand that doesn't match what you already know, what are you going to do? You're going to compare it, right? You're going to compare it to what you know and say, well, that's sort of like this, or it's kind of like that, okay? But if you turn your hand around, what is it? How many times you heard, oh, I know that like the back of my hand. What the heck is that? You know, nobody looks at the back of their hand much. They always look at the palm, right? What I'm going to talk about is the back of your hand. You have, I created this quote, every business owner has the answers to their most difficult issues, but they can't see them because of their obviousness. In other words, the answers are there, you can't see them because you're not paying attention. You can't turn your hand. If I'm talking, what's your name, sir?
Chris.
If I'm talking to Chris, I'm looking at my hand, he's looking at his hand. All he can see is the back of my hand. And he doesn't understand what that means. So in order for me to talk to Chris and get something across to him, I gotta do this, right? So he can turn his hand and see and understand what I'm talking about. Today, I'm gonna go through this very quickly, but that's what my process really does. The first step in the Infinite System implementation process is supplier, producer, customer. Back in the 80s, when Deming got really popular, everything was SPC, okay? That was the acronym for his processes. So SPC stood for Statistical Process Control, which is something I didn't like. But this, I understood. Now, when you look at this, every one of you have been in a job somewhere along the way. And if you're working in a company, you either know you produce something or you're a customer or whatever. In my very first seminar, I have 30 people in the room, and I asked the question, which of these are you? And some kid in the back of the room raised his hand, we're all three. I wanted to kill him because I wanted to use some drama, right? But the truth is, you are all three, okay? And we don't think of it that way. We think, you know, it's all about I, all about me, right? But in actuality, I am all three of these. I figured this out a long time ago when I was working with people. People want to know what's in it for me, okay? They want to know how this is going to impact them. Well, if one person loses, who else loses? Everybody, right? Now, externally, this is real easy to understand. Let's take it internally to the company. You are all three when you have a company. If I'm having a conversation with Chris, this is so hard to get through to people sometimes, but over the years, people really got it fairly quickly, I thought. I'm talking to Chris, and I'm telling him something, right? Now, what am I doing? I'm supplying him with information, right? In order to do that, I had to produce it, or I had to get it from somebody else and filter it through my filter and then tell Chris what I wanted to do. He's my what? Customer, right? But not in the business. You can go to Target or Walmart, anywhere you want, shop for coffee or anything. Say there's 3 cans of coffee on the shelf. 2 of them have debts. Which one are you going to take? The third one, right? Because you have a choice. Not at work. You don't have that choice. So it's not conducive to our style of living, thinking we're free. Okay, we have choice and all that type of thing. So what we've done is truncate this thing, and you're the customer, even though Chris is going to talk back to me, right? I mean, not negatively, but we're going to have a conversation. As soon as he opens his mouth, I've turned into the customer. And this is going on just like that, and nobody's paid attention of the changes in the process. And the communication process then falls apart. So, in my way of thinking, you've all heard of win-win proposition. That's connected to what we call a zero-sum game. The zero-sum game means I win, you gotta lose. That doesn't make much sense. If I win and you lose, then I lose too. So I don't think that's a good model to follow. But if everybody wins, then you got something going for yourself, right? Now, does that mean that if I make $1,000 and Chris makes $100, that he loses? No, he might, that 100 for him might be a lot of money, right? Or if he gets some, what we call respect, little things like respect and trust and autonomy in his work life, that might be worth a lot to him. You just never know what is their trigger. But the point is, if Chris walks away and figures he's losing every time he does something, his attitude's not going to be all that conducive to making things work the right way. So I had to come up with a way to communicate these ideas or philosophies that I developed, okay? As I told you before about the economy or the accounting part of it, you got profit, expenses, and revenue, right? Well, here's another way to look at expenses. This is, I can guarantee you, any company out there has waste in it. And everybody in the company would like to get rid of it because it's a pain. There's one thing I've seen when I talk to people in the workplace, they jump on this right away because they can tell you all the things that are wasted. And if they figure if they can get rid of some of that waste, what happens? The company's got more money. When I presented in my seminars, I said, if you get rid of waste, by the way, I'll throw this one up there, that's the invisible waste. There's 3 different categories. I created that's 3 categories so people had something to pinhole different categories of waste. But the point is, if you reduce waste, that goes right to the bottom line. That's got nothing to do with accounting changes or whatever. It goes straight to the bottom line. Now what happens is that money can be done 3 things with it, right? The company can keep it all. They can drop some of that money into reducing prices for the product or service and get more business, give more job security, or they can share some of it with you. I even created that in my system, and companies that used it have just gone skyrocket, you wouldn't believe. So if we take waste out of the triangle, it comes out and it's pulling waste, it's pulling the expenses up. So it's pretty obvious, it just goes right to profit. Okay, the next thing is, I got the waste and I want to get rid of waste. So I want to incorporate, back in the 80s, everybody's doing quality circles. They were giving people feeling that they're involved. But they really weren't involved. They were given minor issues to take a look at. But in my process, I made that an integral part of getting rid of the waste. Now, how many people have ever heard that we only use about 10% of our brain, you know? Okay, so if that's true, think about that. You got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10 people we're only 50%, 10%. We got one person using 100%, right? So, yeah, that's Marv. Marv's using his. The rest of us, we're not doing anything. But the point is, see, when I do a lot of these things, people are laughing, but it's the truth. Okay? Science has gotten so good with these neuroscience and these things that they can do with the brain. They already know that they can prove that, okay? So, if I incorporate everybody in the process of getting rid of waste in the company, right? If I have, at least I got 100% of, if I've got 10 people, I end up with one person using 100%, but every one of you using 10, well, maybe we throw that in too. You would be surprised. I just can't even tell you the things that I witnessed in these teams where people were sitting around, the first thing that happens is they get in fights. Not physically, well, once maybe, but most of the time it's just verbal, okay? Pointing fingers, blame, all that kind of stuff. And the bosses would tell them, no, I can't do that. I said, shut up. You gotta get what I call the pus and vinegar out of the sore. You know, you get a sore, you gotta lance it, get rid of the garbage, it'll start to heal. Well, these people have all this pent up anger and resentment in their body, and they're not gonna be very cooperative. As soon as you get rid of some of that, then they start thinking, well, what are we gonna solve here? I don't care. Pick something. Anything you think would work, you have a problem that you want to solve, you get a consensus in the group, and they start solving. Let's just assume for the heck of it, they don't solve it. They run into a dead end, or it doesn't work. Did my system fail? No. My system proved it doesn't work. Yeah, you've all heard of Thomas Edison, right? The reporter talks to Thomas Edison, said, hey, you've tried 10,000 ways to create a incandescent light bulb, and you failed. No, Edison looked at him and said, no, I proved there's 10,000 ways that it doesn't work. Okay? So when it fails, what do? You go back and look at what you did and see if there's a better way, and everybody always gets the second time. You never go to the third try. You always do it on the second try. So I created this process of how to, actual process analysis map, if you want to call it that, but a process that can actually make it work. Now this looks like Greek up here probably to you, but this is called a fishbone diagram created by a guy in Japan back in the 50s. It's called an Ishikawa diagram. All it is a fault tree type of process that you can analyze anything with, okay? The top one, they're causative. Everybody wants to know, well, what's making it happen, right? The cause and effect diagram has some functionality to it that makes really good sense. These are all, not all the departments, but 6 of the departments I threw up here. I did that for a reason. Deming said 85% of the problems in corporate America were attributable to management. They didn't want to hear that because they're blaming the people for all the problems. But if you take 6 arrows, they're about 16, 70% apiece, right? So this is 85, that's 16, or thereabouts. So that's why I did it that way. But the point is, you can throw all the departments up there. If every department started looking at their internal organizational structure and the waste that they're generating within their company, things would change. I created this one to make it a little more acceptable to people who like to plot stuff. You have an obvious, probable, and invisible, okay, waste. All these different companies can sit down in a conference room somewhere and start, we call it hallucinating. What are some of the things that are obviously we're wasting? What about probable? To get the invisible, they don't know. But I do, because I've done it so many times. I know what the invisible wastes are. Yes, out of the 3 things, which category has the most waste? Most dollars associated with it. The invisible, I guarantee it every single time. And it's remember I said it, the executives can't solve their problem because of their obviousness. That's why it's invisible. It's there, but they don't see it. Because why? They've been doing it for 200 years. Well, not them, but the process, the organizational structure has been around for 200 years. This one is what I call the sort of the workhorse of the whole process. This is where the action meets the road. This is called the 4 M's, man, machine, method, material. And like I said, I wanted 6, so I came up with 2 more. Environment and technology. Environment does not mean lights, heat, cold, water, whatever. Environment is the attitudinal environment within an organization. And believe me, you can track it, what do you call it, with metrics. I've done it many times. It's so much fun to do it because people don't think you can be measured. So they go along with you, okay? Technology, you all are into that category, but you know, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, technology was a computer maybe, or what do you call it?
Slide
Huh?
rule. Slide rule.
Yeah, slide rule, yeah. But there was not a whole lot of this far out kind of stuff that you guys are dealing with. But let me ask you this: could a light be a technology that you could use, or a bell, or a whistle, or a horn, or a limit switch? All those things, a video camera, all those things could be a piece of technology that could help you solve a problem if you were aware that the problem existed, right? And we've used that in unbelievable numbers of things. Same thing here. It's just a repeat of the first one, but it has the categories on the left that are a little bit different. This is what I mentioned earlier when I talk about people who try something. What time is it, John?
You're doing good.
Okay, here's an example of this. I had a small company up in Portage, Indiana, 4 people running one piece of equipment, okay, for 4 different shifts, because he ran all week, 21 turns. So we had the brainstorm session, and we talked about, you know, what are the problems for the delays on the machines, okay, because that was a real pain in the butt for them. So this is something I created back in the 80s too. I needed someone to collect the data, okay? So they came up with ideas. These are the reasons for delays, right? So they came up with 9 things. My graphic artist screwed up. I wanted 10. 9 plus 1 for 10. But we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 blocks. So this is other, okay? Now, if you are the 4 people that run that machine, who better to pick these lists, right? Well, they did that. They put them here. And when these delays happen, they put little check marks. Just all you're doing is it happened, you know, it's a binary, yes or no, okay? So all of a sudden, as this is growing, this data is being collected, we're actually tracking it up here. It's called a trend chart. Deming was in the X-bar chart. I know all about that, but it doesn't make sense at this point. So all I want to do is get a visual representation of the performance over time, okay? And it can be anything. You can use a percentage or just a number. So they're tracking this for like 2 or 3 weeks. And all of a sudden they noticed other had the most check marks. They were not happy. They go to the CEO of a small company. They went to the CEO as a group and said, we don't want to work with Gil anymore. And the president and CEO says, what's the matter? Well, he tricked us. Well, what did he do? And they told him what I did. And he says, wait a minute. His system worked. He proved to you, or you proved to yourself, that other, which should be a minor portion of these delays, were another. Maybe you ought to go back and talk to Gil, figure out what other means, which they did. And I told them how to reconstruct this. Solved the problem in like 2 weeks. We've solved problems like this in a week, 2 days, 3 days. It's unbelievable how fast this can work because the people in the operation have a vested interest in the solution. So here's what I was mentioning before. You start with making a choice, okay? You got a team of people, you're gonna choose some actions. You take the actions, and then you get what? Results, right? In the traditional way of solving problems, then if this result is what you like, you just go on, you know, you got it, right? But if it doesn't, they go back there and make another choice. And they keep doing that. Nobody's analyzing the results, traditionally. With our process, we're going to analyze them as we go so that we can make better educated decisions the next time around. I've seen people do this in a group, and I've got these smaller graphs that make it real easy for somebody to collect data. I can't tell you how many people that worked in a group that would fold these up, put them in their pocket, and go out and try to prove their boss is screwing them around or another department is screwing them around. They're going to use this as a bullet, so to speak, to get even, right? And what they'll do is they'll collect the data, and it doesn't work, so they throw it away. And I've seen this with people that we're working with, and they'll say, they'll quit taking the data. I said, what happened? I don't have time for it. It doesn't make any sense. It's a bunch of whatever. I said, why don't you just tell me the truth? It didn't work. You were wrong. It's okay to be wrong. You can now be right. Let's figure it out, what we can do and make it right. It's just unbelievable how fast this thing turns around and gets people on the right track to the solutions of the problem. And it opens up a whole Pandora's box of possibilities that you don't, uh-oh, John. You can see I'm not the technical guy. But this is a real simple process. I started out with this in certain organizational structures, and it really made sense to them that this would work. Okay, now let's see. So once we've gotten to here, this part of it.
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe it's something else.
Well, when we get to that point, the teams are working together. Here's what I found. When people start working on a problem, like I said, they're fighting or having adversarial relationships. As the team starts moving towards solutions, Chris is considered a bum, just for the hell of it. But this guy over here, he's a smart guy, right? What's your name?
Calvin.
Okay, Calvin, he's smart, okay? Everybody knows Calvin's smart. They think you're a bum, okay? So anything you say, nobody's gonna listen to. So what happens is, thanks, John. So what happens is, you say something, Chris, in the meeting. How many people listen to it? But I'm sitting in the meeting. You think I listen? Yeah, because I don't care. I don't know you're a bum, okay? I don't have that opinion. I had a guy at US Steel. This is after I was, no, actually I was still at US Steel. We were doing the process. Had an Italian guy who was a playboy. Cool clothes, he'd walk around. He's really a dude, right? And nobody, they just thought he was a jerk, okay? They had a reputation. He said something in a meeting one day, and everybody just discarded it, just laughed at him. And I heard him, of course. I went to his station on the line. I spent 2.5 hours with him talking about his idea. His idea was worth $1.7 million savings a month. What a stupid guy. But nobody listened to it. I took his idea and I implemented it by getting involved with electricians, mechanics, people. Nobody knew what I was doing. They just thought I was a Yahoo coming around with talk and whatever. But, oops. We solved that problem. 1.7 million a month. That's not, I mean, we did that. US Steel's got a lot of money. They've got a lot of waste, so it's real easy to do. But it really pointed to
Just slide it, now stop, don't touch it.
okay, thanks. Okay, if you recall, before I had this line, the president with the line and all the fiefdoms below it, this is a different slide. This is the way it ends up. This is the organizational structure we create as a part of this process, where everybody's trying, all those people that are in the service part of the business, their job is to help production service, whatever we're trying to do, right? That's our job, to help these people. They spend 80, 90% of the time on what we want, you know, so their effort doesn't really help this organizational structure the way we would want it. There was a lady many years ago that sent out little globes of the world, okay? And she put a little note in there, says, which side are you on? It's a little hard to find a side when it's oval, right? So there are no sides in this organizational structure. We're all in this together. And when you get that mentality distributed throughout the whole organization and it starts to really percolate, it's unbelievable what you can do. This is just an example. This is one of the last, what I would call major companies I worked with. It was a $20 million operation. They had been purchased by an investment banker out of New York, and the first year, it was a leveraged buyout. So the first year on $20 million, they made $400,000, like 2%, okay? I was there 2 years. And the president said, we can't grow faster than 5% a year or whatever, okay? Second year, we went to 26 million with about 5 or 6% profit. And in the last year, we went to 32 million with 3.